consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
أن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى رسول الله وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As Brother Nadeem Jazahullah Khairah has just announced, first topic that we're going to deal with in the 3 sessions that we're going to put forward, inshallah, has been entitled The Basic Fiqh of Marriage. The basic fiqh of marriage, it implies that we're only going to touch the surface. We're not going to dig or deal deeply into the issue, because there's a lot to cover when a person wants to get the fiqh of how to get married and what marriage is all about. In terms of the importance of marriage in the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that becomes quite apparent and clear in the fact that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has explained to us in a number of authentic hadith, like his statement, "Man tazawwaja faqad istakmala nisfa al-imani falyattaqillah fi nisf al-baqi." Anyone who has actually gotten married, he has completed half of his or her religion. So let them fear Allah Azza wa Jal in the other half. So we understand from that hadith one of the many aspects that indicate and show the importance of marriage, in that you are not a complete human being until you find your partner or your mate. As Allah has created everything in pairs. Everything has been created in pairs. So the individual goes through life and he's not married, he didn't find his mate, then in the scope of the deen, he's not necessarily a complete human being. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, he asked one of his students who came to him, "Did you get married yet?" The man said, "No." He said, "Hurry up and get married, because the best of this ummah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the one who got married, and he got married a number of times, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His sunnah is to get married." And he freed himself from the individual who intentionally tries not to get married in an attempt to get closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. He says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man raghiba an sunnati falaysa minni." Anyone who abandons and avoids getting married in an attempt to try to get close to Allah, then he is not from me. He is not from me. There are some major scholars in this religion, some major heavyweights, some high-power scholars in the past who didn't get married, like Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, like Al-Imam As-Suyuti, like Al-Imam An-Nawawi, and scholars who are even bigger than them. Books have been written about those scholars who didn't get married. But if you were to look at the detailed biography and the lives of those scholars, you will find that they were not just ordinary people. They used to spend large amounts of time in prison, large amounts of time in jihad, fi sabilillah, and so forth, so on. For one reason or another, they didn't get married. Our example is the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam, who encouraged the people to get married. And he told us that when Isa ibn Maryam comes back, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, he himself is also going to get married because he didn't marry while he was here. So all of that shows and indicates in terms of the fiqh of marriage that it is extremely important and it is crucial that the Muslim understands he has a religious responsibility to look at this issue in that type of way. You're not a complete individual until you are an individual who has completed half of your deen by getting married. In addition to that, what shows the importance of the issue is the fact that when we talk about the basic fiqh and understanding that we try to acquire how to get married and things like that, what was said and revealed about marriage in the Quran and the Sunnah, what happened in the marriages of the previous prophets and messengers, the people in the Quran who were married and so forth and so on, we'll find that all of the books of fiqh, all of them without any exception, those books of fiqh that are in a specific particular madhab, in every single book of fiqh there is a chapter of an-nikah. Al-fiqh is getting comprehension about how to get married. Whether you're getting a fiqh book that's in a particular madhab, that chapter is going to be there. And whether the fiqh book that you're dealing with is comprehensive fiqh, or what they call fiqh al-muqarin, where they're not too concerned with what the madhab is saying, but they just want to show what the strongest opinion is. That's called comparative fiqh. In all of those books, there is the issue of getting married. So if it was a waste of time, if it wasn't important, the scholars of Islam, they wouldn't have canonized the issue. Not only the books of fiqh indicate that, but all of the books of hadith, all of them. They have the chapter of getting married. Those books of the Sunan, the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari and Muslim, Abu Dawud, al-Tirmidhi, and Nasai ibn Majah, all of those books. The Muwatta of Imam Malik, the Masanid, although they don't come in the fiqh approach, nonetheless, all of those books, they're going to have in them the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the issue of marriage. Again, what does it show for the person who has basira, for the person who's using his mind? It goes to show to the student of knowledge, the serious Muslim, that the issue of marriage and getting fiqh and comprehension in this chapter, in this bab, it is serious, it's important in the deen of Allah. So we all understand, we comprehend books of fiqh are going to talk about it, books of hadith, also the books of aqidah. The books of aqidah showing the importance of marriage. Many of those books of aqidah that the scholars wrote in the past, they deal with issues of theology, what the Muslim should believe about the Sirat Yawm al-Qiyamah, about the Mizan Yawm al-Qiyamah, about the Prophet's Hawd or his fountain, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about his intercession, loving the companions, all of those issues. Many of those scholars used to also include in those books of Aqidah some fiqh issues like believing in stoning, fiqh issues like what is the ruling of the one who abandons the salat, issues like wiping over the khufs when you make wudu, wiping over your khufs, your socks, leather or other than that. Why did they put those fiqh issues, those masail and fiqhiyah in the book of Aqidah? Because some groups who went astray, groups of deviation, they rejected some of these fiqh issues. So it shows the importance of getting married in the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, as far as knowledge is concerned, is that those ulama of Islam, they put in the books of fiqh issues concerning marriage being different from the people of a tashayyu', for an example, who see the permissibility today of muta' marriage. So the scholars will put that issue in those books of Aqidah to say the people of the Sunnah, they don't do muta' marriage. And the reason for that is that it has been established clearly in the Kitab, it's been established clearly in the Sunnah of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the reasons why I'm mentioning this, Ikhwani, is because I was a bit disturbed, taken aback a little bit by some of the comments that I heard from some of the members of our community, Ghafarallahu lana wa lahum. Some of the brothers who were saying, why would they name the conference about love and getting married? There's so many other important issues. Now, there are other important issues, but this issue of marriage is an appropriate issue and it's an important issue. If you want to prove that you're a person of the Sunnah and Ahl Sunnah, the title of the conference does not have to be the importance of Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, Rububiyyah, al-Asma wa Sifat, and that's the proof and the indication you're on Ahl Sunnah and Ahl Hadith's way. That's not an indication in and of itself. Matter of fact, again, those books that the scholars used to write about the Aqeedah and the Minhaj al-Sahih, they used to put from the descriptions of the people of the Sunnah is that they pay attention to getting knowledge, learning knowledge, getting knowledge of the Quran, knowledge of reading the Quran and the tafsir of the Quran, and they get knowledge of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and getting fiqh and comprehension about his Sunnah and what he did. So if someone wanted to give a conference like this and it was about the miswak, the person of the Sunnah, he's not going to come and say, well, what is that about, the miswak? Why would those ulama of Islam, when they talked about a tahara, why would they put the issue of the miswak and all of the benefits that come as a result of the miswak? Is that the most important topic under the sun, on top of the earth? La wallahi, is not the most important topic. But the Muslim should never have that type of thing in his heart, like the people of innovation. When something of the Sunnah comes to him, big or small, he says, ala ra's wal ayn, bring it. It's from al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then I'm down with the program. From the characteristics of the people of the Sunnah is learning the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal from A to Z, alif to ya, starting off with the smaller things and gradually going up and so forth and so on. Another thing is, in this masjid right now, Ikhwani, there's not a single individual except the issue of marriage is important to him. So this is from the fiqh al-waqi'. This is from the knowledge that people need to know, need to understand. There's not a single person out there except that marriage is an important and integral part of his or her existence. His mother and his father was married. He wants to get married. She's struggling with the issue of her marriage and so forth and so on. So let us not be of those people who beat the drum very loud and they use the bullhorn and the microphone to rely on slogans. To prove that we're on the Sunnah, we have to name the conference and we have to title it something that proves what, everything from al-Islam. We have to enter into this religion wholeheartedly. So those are many of the issues that show and indicate the importance or the ahmiyah of a nikah and the deen of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So when we're talking about the basic fiqh of marriage, you should know there's too much information out there. And as the Nabi mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man yuridillahu bihi khayra yufaqihu fi din. If Allah wants good for an individual, he will teach him and give him comprehension of the religion. So now we come to the issue of, when we talk about the fiqh of marriage, we have to talk about what is marriage, as those scholars put in their books. And nikah, what is it? What is the tasawwur and the mafhum of a nikah with the Muslims in Islam? What is it? If you were to ask someone, you're about to get married, you say to the brother, what is your understanding of marriage? Say to the sister, what is your understanding of marriage? Some people's understanding of marriage is thrown off, is warped, and as a result of that, the approach to it can be a problem. Many scholars have given definitions for marriage. I don't want to use the comprehensive definition that was given by Sheikh Muhammad ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he's one of our contemporary scholars that died a few years ago, who dealt with the issue of nikah and the fiqh of nikah in many of his books, in many of his lessons, in many of his advices that he gave to the ummah. The definition that he gave consists of three components. He mentioned, rahimahullah ta'ala wa askanahu ta'ala fi jannatihi al-wasi'ah. He said that marriage in Islam is a mutual contract that is conducted between a man and a woman. He didn't say a man and a man, and he didn't say a woman and a woman. It is a mutual contract. Again, someone wants to get married. What is your understanding of marriage? He says, my understanding is, I get a man and a man. We say, hey, understanding is outside of our deen. That's outside of our deen. And ikhwani, these basic, simple, easy to understand points in definition, they help us to be in a position where when crazy people pop up and people are saying weird things, it's easy for the Muslim not to become mutaza'za. Mutaza'za is when something happens, you start shaking. You don't know what to do because you hear things that are weird. You don't give them the time of the day. So he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, the marriage in al-Islam, it is the mutual agreement and the contract between a man and a woman. The goal and the objective of which is for each of them to enjoy the other. Number 3, and also with the intention of creating between themselves a pious family and a sound society. That's a comprehensive ta'rif and definition of a nikah. Again, to repeat and to reiterate, what is marriage in Islam? What's the concept of marriage in our deen? What is it? Because some of the Western countries in America, they have something that's called the common law wife, the common law husband. You may not be married, but if one of the two people die, the other one can inherit from them because they live together enough years to constitute where that person can inherit. In our deen, marriage is the mutual contract agreement between a man and a woman. The goal and the objective for both of them is that they would enjoy each other. And number 3, that they would try to create a pious family and a sound society. All 3 of those components, a lot can be said about all 3 of those components. Marriage is a contract. And Allah Ta'ala commanded throughout the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu awfu bil uqud. Take care of all of your contracts, all of them. Contract between you and your workplace, contract between you and the country you live in, contract between you and the non-Muslim, and the contract between the man and the woman. That is the most serious contract in terms of Bani Adam. The Prophet, he mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inna ashaddu shurut alaykum an tufu biha mastahlaltum biha al-furuj. The most significant and the most important contracts that you have to live up to and you have to take care of are the contracts that allow the private parts to become halal, the contracts of marriage. So if the man agrees before the marriage, I'm not going to get married to another woman while I'm married to you, he has to live up to that. If the man agrees, I will not force you to live with my parents, he has to live up to that. If the man agrees, I will not take you to another city other than the city of your mother and your father, he has to live up to that to the best of his ability. When they make those conditions and one of the two partners put on the paper between themselves these contracts or these agreements, these conditions, it is the most important conditions and contracts that an individual has to live up to. And they enjoy one another for the pleasure. The man, he is getting pleasure from the lady and vice versa. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in an authentic hadith, حُبِّبَ مِن دُنْيَاكُمْ حُبِّبَ إِلَيَّ مِن دُنْيَاكُمْ النِّسَاءُ وَالطِّيبُ وَجُعِلَتِ الصَّلَاةُ قُرَّةُ أَعْيُنِي. He said, what has been made pleasing to me, what I enjoy from your dunya. You people go overboard in the dunya. What I enjoy from your dunya is I enjoy the women and I enjoy nice smelling perfumes. Meaning, when he's married, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he enjoys the pleasure that's derived from a good wife. That's the meaning of the hadith. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it goes to show that there is some pleasure that is derived from the marriage. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the Quran, and He created the people on the fitrah. زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ. Made beautiful to the nas, made beautiful to men, is the love and the desire for women and children. So it is an issue where the man is going to enjoy the lady, and the lady is going to enjoy the man. One of his companions, his name is Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhu. His father died. His father is the only human being that Allah Azza wa Jalla spoke to without any hijab. Every other human being, Allah Azza wa Jalla spoke to that individual from behind a hijab, except Jabir ibn Abdullah's father. When his father died, he got married. He had 10 sisters. He married a lady who had been married already. She wasn't a virgin girl. The Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why didn't you marry a virgin girl? So that you can play with her and she can play with you. It shows a sense of that point of what the Shaykh was talking about. Rahimahullahu tabaraka wa ta'ala. And many other things can be mentioned, but we have to move on, and we have to understand that point in light of the Quran and the Sunnah, not in light of the idea of those people who try to distort and they try to throw dirt on the person of Al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. He said, and the goal and the objective is so that the two of them can have a family, children. They can procreate, and also so that they can build sound societies. In Sahih al-Bukhari, he brought the hadith of Sulaiman, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Sulaiman said, الليلة سأطوف على 100 نسوة كل واحدة منهن تأتي بفارس يجاهد في سبيل الله. He said, tonight, Sulaiman, I am going to have relationships with 100 women tonight. Each and every one of those women, she's going to get pregnant and bring forth a mujahid who's going to fight fi sabilillahi. Al-Imam al-Bukhari, he made this chapter, this hadith chapter, the chapter of what? The one who gets married with the intention of spreading the deen. His goal is desire, and this is a sunnah that's lost. His goal and desire is, I want to have children who are going to defend the religion. And even if I have daughters, and they may not be able to go and defend the religion in that way, they'll be married to men who do that, and so forth and so on. So proof is indication. The Nabi told this community, told us, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, تزوجوا الودود الولود فإني مكافر بكم الأمم يوم القيامة. He said, get married, you people who are not married. He said, get married, people of this ummah. Get married to the women who are wudud, women who are loving, affectionate, and women who are walud, they are prolific in having babies. He said, for verily, I want to be the prophet that has the majority of the followers, Yawm al-Qiyamah. So that hadith clearly shows and it indicates and it illustrates one of the reasons he told you to get married is to get married to the loving lady, someone who you can have sakina with, as Allah mentioned in the Quran, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. From his ayat is that he created for you women from your own selves. They're like you. He didn't create you to marry the jinn. He didn't create you to marry monkeys. He didn't create you to marry malaika. He created you to marry women who are from your nature. You complement them and they complement you. So that you can taskunu ilayha. So that you can have sakina. You can have sakina. We'll come to that inshallah azza wa jal. And he made between you love and mercy. So he advised the men, get married to the woman who is loving. And why did he mention loving before prolific? Al-wadud al-wulud. He mentioned the loving lady because if the lady is loving towards her husband and there's love between them existing, she'll be more than happy to have a child for him. If there's no love, the last thing she wants to do is to have a child. So that shows and it indicates again clearly what is marriage in the fiqh of marriage. It is a contract between the man and the woman with the goal and the objective of him enjoying that lady and that lady as well enjoying her husband. And number 3, with the goal and the objective of bringing children. Which children, though, is the question. Not any child. Children who are mujrims, criminals, not like that. Children who are falling to antisocial behavior. Children who are doing everything that Allah doesn't want to be done in the earth. No, pious children. That's why the hadith said, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمٍ قَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. If the son of Adam dies, anyone dies, all of his deeds cease to exist. They stop, except one of 3 things. And one of them that he mentioned, وَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُ لَهُ. A righteous son that makes dua for him. The righteous son. So the marriage, goal and the objective is to make righteous people, righteous children. And those righteous children, inshallah, collectively are going to make a strong and a righteous society. We'll all find what I just mentioned to you, ikhwani, in the books of fiqh. So that the one who is embarking upon marriage, the one who is married, he has to remind himself, this is the goal and this is the objective. So if this is the case, then let us deal with the issue and let us deal with each other in a different way. Because the reasons why we're arguing and the way that we're existing, me and my wife, you and your wife, the husbands and the wives of our community, is an indication we may not be understanding that. Now we have to come to the point of those individuals, ikhwani, that we can and cannot marry. But even before that, what is the ruling of getting married? I mean, we mentioned here today that it was in the history of Islam that some of those great scholars didn't get married. And as I mentioned, their names have been gathered up. Big people. Big people. We want to make it clear once again that our example is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ultimately. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have in him a perfect example. We follow him unconditionally. We obey him unconditionally. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And getting married was from his sunnah. And the book that he brought told the Muslims to say, like in Surah Al-Furqan, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةُ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. That's a dua of the believer. Oh, our Lord, give unto us, bless us with wives and children who will be the coolers of our eyes in the dunya before the hereafter, but also including the hereafter. That's the religion he brought, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what is the ruling of getting married in Islam? There's a lot of ikhtilaf between the scholars. Some say that it's wajib. Some people say other than that, and everyone has his dalil. Seems like the best position to say is, generally speaking, getting married is something that is highly recommended. It's mustahab. It may be wajib on an individual because of his or her situation. It may become wajib. It may be. If the person has the money and they have the means and they have the ability, then it is something that is highly recommended. He has the mental capacity. He has the disposition. Then it is something that is highly recommended. So the argument of, is it wajib, is it this, is it that, although it is knowledge-based, it's not an issue that we're going to introduce here because of the time that it's going to take, and there are other issues, I think, that should be introduced to the minds of the audience. So it's something that is highly recommended. Not only is it highly recommended or mustahab, but the issue of marriage is more important than to the majority of the scholars. They said, the ibadat, the extra ibadah of salat and zakat and hajj and umrah, the extra one, the fudul of the ibadat, the extra stuff that you do. They said getting married is more important than that, more virtuous than that. But to say that it's wajib on everybody, the person, there's some dalil for that from the Quran, the Sunnah. But we'll stick with that easy position, inshallah, on the middle course, that it is highly recommended and is natural. So everybody should be an individual who's feeling that way. One day I'm going to get married. Right now I'm thinking about getting married and growing and developing ourselves and our children and those who are around us with that goal and desire. So who can we get married to? The general rule in Islam is you can marry whoever you want to marry. You can do whatever you want to do. outside of the ibadat, the worship in Islam, you can do whatever you want to do. Drink what you want to drink, wear what you want to wear, whatever color. You can do whatever you want to do. That's the general rule. The general rule. Until some proof comes to say, don't do this and don't do that. Don't drink this, don't drink that. Don't eat this and don't eat that. Don't sit like that and don't sit like this. As you people are sitting in the audience, this religion taught us how to sit and how not to sit. Generally speaking, you can sit however you want to sit. You can sit reclining on your right arm, your left arm. You can sit like that. But there's a sitting he said, don't sit like those people Allah is angry with. And that's a particular sitting. The point is, in the dunya, do whatever you want to do until there's a text that says don't do it. So from those people we can't marry, when we talk about the fiqh of marriage, and this is important, is that a man cannot marry his father's wife. His father could have been with some woman, and he married that woman who's not his mother. Can't marry that lady. People in Jahiliyyah, for an example, they come into Islam. Maybe his father happened to be with a lady that he didn't marry. And in Islam, you can't look at that lady. You can't consider that lady. And Allah revealed this on the Arabs because this is something they would do. The man wouldn't marry his mother. He wouldn't marry his mother. But if his father was married to a lady, he would marry that lady. And his father may be alive or he may be dead. They used to do that in Jahiliyyah. Allah revealed the ayat, وَلَا تَنْكِهُ مَا نَكَهَ آبَاؤُكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا قَدْ سَلَفَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَمَقْتًا Sabila. Don't marry those women who your fathers married before. That was a bad thing that they used to do. Don't do that. Once that ayah came down, made it haram. That's an ayah of the Quran. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned a number of people. And this is the fiqh of the issue. Fiqh is comprehension. I want to get married. Okay, there are some people you can't marry no matter what. Because they were mentioned in the Quran. حرمت عليكم أمهاتكم وبناتكم وأخواتكم وعماتكم وخالاتكم وبنات الأخ وبنات الأخت وأمهاتكم التي أرضعنكم وأخواتكم من الرضاعة وأمهات نسائكم وربائبكم اللاتي في حجوركم من نسائكم اللاتي دخلتم بهن فإن لم تكونوا دخلتم بهن فلا جناح عليكم وحلائل أبنائكم الذين من أصلابكم وأن تجمعوا بين أختين إلا ما قد سلف. Allah mentioned in this ayat, haram for you to marry. You cannot marry your mother, you can't marry your sister, you can't marry your daughter. You can't marry your paternal auntie or your maternal auntie, your father's sisters or your mother's sister. Those 5 people were mentioned. You cannot marry your niece from your brother's side, your niece from your sister's side, forever. Those people forever. You can't think about them. You can't marry the lady that the mother, the lady who gave you milk, you sucked from her. You drink her milk. It used to be if you drank from her 10 times and you let her go by yourself, she became your mother. And then it was reduced to 5. The baby latched on, he drank 5 different drinks at 5 different times, and he let it go by himself, that lady becomes his mother. And you can't marry her daughters. Once you drink from her, her daughters become your sisters. And the Prophet said in an authentic hadith, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yuhramu min al-rada'a ma yuhramu min al-nasab. The milk that you drink from a woman makes the relationships haram, just like the blood relationships. So if there is a lady that someone drinks from, her mother you can't marry, her daughters you can't marry, her sisters are your aunties. Everyone who's connected to that lady is going to be connected to you in the way that the lineage connects you to that lady. The ayat went on to mention about the people who you cannot marry. You can't marry the mothers of your wives. Once you sit down and you agree to marry your wife, you agree to marry, and you get married and you write the contract. From that point on, her mother is haram for you. Haram. Whether you have relationships with her or not. Her mother is haram for you. Nor can you marry your stepdaughters. Your wife has a daughter. You can't marry her daughter if you consummate it with the mother, the ayah said. But if you didn't consummate with the mother, you didn't, and you got out of the marriage, it was a divorce, she died, and you never consummated, and the daughter is there, and that situation presented itself, you can marry her. But obviously, to do something like that, you have to think 1,000 times. You have to think about so many ramifications. This issue by itself is a lot of fiqh that needs to be understood. But the ayah made it clear. You can't marry the daughter of your wife, your stepdaughter, if you consummate it. If you didn't consummate it, then you can marry her daughter. And you can't marry the wives of your sons. Your sons who are from your loins, once your son marries a lady, you can't ever marry that lady because he was the ex-wife of your son. And also the ayah said, and this is very important, Ikhwani, in this ayah, because it shows an issue of aqidah, and that is the ayah said, you can't marry your wife, and her sister at the same time. Your wife and her sister at the same time. If you marry your wife and something happens, and then you marry her sister, this is something that Muslims do because the sister of the wife are going to take care of the children. It's a common practice with the Arabs. It's a practice that people have in the Muslim world, in Africa and other than that. So those are some of the people who can't be married. And another ayat, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned from those people who can't be married, He said, Tabarak wa ta'ala, وَالْمُحْسَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. And you cannot marry a woman who is already married. A woman who is already married. So from the people you can't marry, or some people, you can't marry them because of a situation. But if that situation changes, then you can marry them. But as long as that situation is there, you can't get married. But it's not something that's permanent. For an example, a man is married to a woman, he divorced her 3 times. He can't marry her until she gets married again. There's fiqh in that. If a man divorced his wife, the lady is in her iddah period. She's in her iddah. You can't marry her until that iddah is done. A lady is available to get married, but she's not a Jew, she's not a Christian, she's not a Muslim, she's a Sikh or a Hindu, she's agnostic, she's an atheist. You can't marry her until she becomes a Muslim, until she becomes a Jew, until she becomes a Christian. So there are a number of women in this situation. There is something in Islam called al-li'an. That's when the man comes and he says, with no witnesses, my wife committed zina, she committed adultery. And then he curses, wallahi, she did it, wallahi, wallahi, wallahi. And then the 5th time he say, may the curse of Allah be upon me if I'm lying. And then she comes and say, you're lying, wallahi, you're lying 4 times. And may the anger of Allah be upon me, telling the truth. If that happened between a man and a woman, he can't marry that lady again, ever, khalas. But if he comes and he says, I was lying. When I accused her, I was lying. I made that mistake. Then he's allowed to marry her, but he's going to be whipped because he bore false witness. And there are other people, but the point is, this group of people, ikhwani, this group of people, you can't marry them because of some condition. If that condition changes, then you can marry. And there are many people like that. How are you going to come to know about it? By learning the religion. So those people were mentioned in the Quran that I gave you. They're everybody mentioned in the Quran. But there's one woman who wasn't mentioned in the Quran. And if it wasn't for the Sunnah, we wouldn't know about this woman. So for the people who say we don't need the Sunnah, if a person says that and he believes that, he runs the risk of going outside of Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned in authentic hadith, لا يجمع الرجل بين امرأة وعمتها أو خالتها. If a man gets married to a woman, he shouldn't be married to her and her maternal aunt or her paternal aunt at the same time. Which goes to show what? The wisdom of Islam. There are going to be some problems with plural marriage. There's going to be jealousies with plural marriage. It's going to happen. So you can't break the ties of relationship between the blood. You can't do that. So Islam didn't allow a man to marry his wife and his sister at the same time. To marry his wife and her auntie at the same time, so that there's no drama and no static between them. That hadith comes to us in authentic narration. If it wasn't for the Sunnah, we wouldn't know that. It would be permissible for you to marry your wife and her auntie at the same time. But we say again, we take the Quran and the Sunnah, both of them are together. We find out, ikhwani, when we talk about the fiqh of getting married, one of the most important aspects in the chapters of getting married is to know not only who you can marry and who you can't marry, but from the people who you can marry, what are the descriptions that the man should be looking for? What are the descriptions that the lady should be looking for? I think that was alluded to yesterday, and I'm sure that it was spoken about earlier today, and it's going to be spoken about throughout these next 2 days, bi-idhnillah. As he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the woman is married for 4 things. She's married because of her money, because of her beauty, because of her lineage, and because of her deen. Marry the one with the deen and you'll be successful. He told us that in that authentic hadith, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If someone comes to you as the wali, someone comes to you, he wants to marry your daughter, he wants to marry your wali or your sister, someone you're responsible for, then if you're pleased with their akhlaq and their deen, then marry them. If you don't do it, there's going to be fitna in the earth and fasad. All of those hadith indicate and they show you want to look for a person who has some deen and they have some compatibility, what they call it katha. And that's why I said yesterday, and I'll continue to say inshallah, for the young brothers who come from communities where the mother and the father are very strict on their ethnic background, their ethnicity. They come from a country, their family is from the north, and they want you to marry someone from your tribe from the north, someone from your tribe in the south, someone who comes from your village, someone who's a relative of yours. If you can do that, you should try to do it. If you can do it. Doesn't mean that it's haram to go outside. Doesn't mean that at all. But that issue of compatibility and age and all of that. Abu Bakr came to the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wanted to marry Fatima. The Prophet said no. Umar came. He wanted to marry Fatima. He said no. He married her to Ali. He said to Abu Bakr and Umar, you two are old and she's young. That compatibility. You two 30, 40 years older than her. She's young. But it's permissible to do that. Umar radiallahu anhu, during his khilafah, when he was the Khalifa, he married the daughter of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And he had many years on her. He said, I didn't want to get married. I had no need to get married. Umar said, I had no need to get married. The reason why I wanted to marry her is that I heard the Prophet say a hadith, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that all relationships will be cut off Yawm al-Qiyamah. There'll be no benefit except the relationships that come from me. So I wanted it to be more connected to the Nabi. Marry someone close to him, like his granddaughter. And he was much older than the girl, and that's the point. So we have to look for that individual who has the religion and they have the akhlaq. She doesn't have to be a hafiz of the Quran. She doesn't have to be a woman who, in terms of religious, she's the most religious in the world, but it's something you can work with. And religion and akhlaq here, especially religion, it doesn't mean that the guy wears a thobe and he has a beard and he has a misbah in his pocket. And it doesn't mean as well, when you're looking for a wife, that she's a lady that just has jilbab on. I saw with my own eyes, and I'm not judging anyone, on the public transportation. It was packed out and it was hot. And some Jamaican lady, older lady, was giving a Muslim sister with jilbab and hijab and niqab some kalam. And that sister gave it back to that lady because what that Jamaican lady said was out of order. The way she was talking and what she said. And that sister, you heard her voice. I thought it was a bit inappropriate, but I'm not in her shoes. What the lady said to her was nasty. And that other girl defended herself. Do you want your wife to be like that? I'm not here to judge her. I'm making a point. Jilbab, lihya, speaking Arabic, that's not enough. The man said to Umar radiallahu anhu, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, put that man over there, put that man. Let him be inside of your cabinet. Make him someone who's responsible in your government. Umar said, do you know the man? He said, I know him, wallahi, I know him. He said, did you travel with the man? He said, no. Did you do business with the man? He said, no. Did you eat with the man? He said, no. Did you sleep with the man? He said, no. He said, you don't know that man. You saw that man going up and down the masjid, making ruku. That's all you saw. But as soon as you borrow money to him, he ain't giving you your money back. Then you're going to come to know the individual. So the point is, in trying to find out the reality of people, take your time, ask questions, look at the individual, have someone who's on the scene who's going to do his job, which brings me to the last point of today's session. And a lot of other things can be talked about, the fiqh of getting married. We want to end with this issue. In the marriage, ikhwani, the actual ceremony, the fiqh of the real marriage in Islam has to have 5 things in it. If these 5 things are not there, then that marriage is null and void. That marriage is compromised, especially living here 5 things. First of all, at the top of the list, in order for there to be a marriage, there has to be a wali. No girl who has a Muslim father, uncles, older brothers who are old enough. No Muslim girl born and raised in Islam. She has a father who's on the scene, he's on the set. No Muslim girl should try to get married without her father, without her wali. If she does that, she make khiyana. She make a big sin. Even if she knows her father is one of those people. Hey, we're from the north and those people from the south. Hey, we're black and we're beautiful and they're not black. I'm not going to let you do it. Even if her father's like that and she knows he's going to give her a hard time, she has to make an attempt to go through her father. The Nabi mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, la nikah illa bi waliyin. There is no nikah except you got to have a wali. He said, ayyuma imra'atin nukihat bighayri idni waliyuha fa nikahuha batil. And he mentioned it 3 times. Any woman who got married without her father's permission, her wali, then her marriage is batil. He said, la tunki imra'atun. No woman should marry off another woman. Your mother can't marry you off. Your auntie can't marry you off. Has to be a man from your family. Your father, your uncle, your grandfather, older people who are respectable from your relatives. If you run off and you elope and you get married at the register, you run off and you go to City Hall, that marriage is a problem. Doesn't count. The next two is that you need 2 witnesses. 2 men witnesses from the Muslims. 2 witnesses from the Muslims. You need 2 witnesses. Not 1, but 2. 2 men. If you don't have 2 men, you take 4 women. If you have 1 man and 2 women, then that's okay. But you need at least 2 witnesses for that nikah. So that's 3. Number 4, you have to give the dowry. And we're going to deal with this dowry, inshallah, in our upcoming session. Because the importance of the dowry and what goes wrong with the dowry is learning to the women in our community as a result of the culture. You have to give the girl a dowry. And there's a lot of fiqh about the dowry. A lot of fiqh concerning the dowry. Number 5, and the last condition is you have to have the muwafaqah. You have to have the consent of the girl. In our community, with the Asian community, and I'm not against the Asian community, but this practice is prevalent in the Asian community in this country. If I don't know the family, the people said, I want you to marry, conduct the ceremony. If I know Nadim's daughter is getting married, Nadim's sister's getting married, I'll conduct the nikah because I know this guy has a level of enlightenment and deen where he's not going to force them to get married. I know that. But if it's a group of people who I don't know them, I always insist, got to hear from the girl with my own ears that she's okay with this nikah, because she shouldn't be forced and she shouldn't be compelled. As we mentioned yesterday, the only reason why I mentioned yesterday that there were some scholars who said the girl can be compelled is because of the amana al-ilmiya. I mean, there is a religious responsibility to let you know that idea is out there. Some of the scholars took that position. Some of them said that. I didn't tell you that because I believe in that, or I even think that should be practiced in this day and time in this country. I don't think that. Forcing your daughter to get married is against the law right now in this country, forcing them. And plus those scholars who took that position, although they had their positions and their proofs, there are other scholars who said, no, those positions and those proofs are weak. I only mentioned it because of the amana al-ilmiya. Bas, faqat, that's it. But it shouldn't be done. It shouldn't be done. So those 5 issues have to be present. So if you are attempting to get married, you're in the middle of about to get married, one of those 5 things are gone, they're absent, then you have to step back, pump your brakes, and not approach the issue at all, except that people involved inside of the loop who know what they are doing. So concerning the basic fiqh of marriage, there are a lot of issues that can be and need to be discussed. We only had 50 minutes today, inshallah. It's your job, your responsibility, inshallah, to go back and try to gather up as much information as possible concerning that. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ونسأل الله تعالى التوفيق